Do I have control? Which one? Oh, yeah. Okay. Oh, have mercy.
Hey, y'all are flying tourist class.
All right, I'm in. I can't release.
We only brought a few people.
All right. We are going to resume our budget briefing. We're starting this afternoon with Atlanta Fire Rescue Department. And if you are ready, take it away.
Okay.
We have your handouts.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen.
Afternoon.
It's my pleasure to be here today. President Shipman, council members Shook, Hillis, it's my pleasure to be here today presenting on behalf, also Councilman Winston. It's my privilege to be here today on behalf of the men and women of Atlanta Fire Rescue to present the proposed budget for fiscal year 2025. We thank each of you for your support, continued support of AFRD, and we'll jump into our presentation. We'll start with the first slide here, which is representational of the organizational structure of Atlanta Fire Rescue. We have 6 divisions of labor. Members you see around me each lead in those respective areas, and I'll start with the introductions. To my far right, you'll see Chief Derek Harris, who is the Deputy of Field Operations. To his left, you will see Deputy Chief Alan Burton, who is the Chief of Technical Services. You will see on my right, Ms. Shy Harden-Picking, who is our business manager. To my left, you'll see James McLemore, who is the first deputy for Atlanta Fire Rescue, and to his left, you'll see Chief Stephen Hill. And last but certainly not least, you will see the interim deputy for EMS, Jason Wozniak. Did I forget anybody? Okay. With that, we will go on and dive into the next slide. As always, we thank the mayor and his executive team for always supporting Atlanta Fire Rescue. He has been a man of his word when he put public safety at the top of the table from day one. He has always supported us, and we continue to march under the pillars established by his administration of one safe city. We look at our accomplishments thus far for fiscal year 25 and or calendar year 23. And we're very excited about the opening of 2 new stations. Fire Station number 36, which was a replacement for Station 31, and our new EMS Station 37, which is the first of its kind. And we are very excited to be stepping over into the space of EMS, and we are anxious about our next movements up to the north side of town. We continue with our fleet enhancement program, the established program where we are diligently replacing antiquated and old fire equipment or fire apparatus. And so the administration thankfully supports us in that space. And so during this time, we have ordered up to date a total of 44 pieces of equipment that can be broken out later for you so that you can see exactly what we have done. But the work is still yet to be done, and we will continue in that space in the next fiscal year. The purchase of capital equipment. Proud to say that during the previous fiscal year, we were able to replace all breathing apparatus for Atlanta Fire Rescue, replace all automatic defibrillators as well as manual defibrillators for the city of Atlanta, as well as order 2 jet boats for our swift water or technical rescue teams. In that spirit, we recognize that the call volume in the city of Atlanta is extremely high, so our efforts continue to reduce our calls for service. And we start with the vetting and continue vetting of E911 call types and who is actually responding to those calls. And we look in our community risk reduction section, and we continue to address false alarms that are occurring across the city. But there's yet still work to be done in those spaces, and you will hear some of that as we talk about what is up and coming over the horizon. And last and certainly not least, for our accomplishments. We continue to join the virtual town hall meetings as well as participate in community events and serve our communities before the red lights come on. For fiscal year 25, new and improved, you will see that we have a continued effort of support for our behavioral health and wellness unit. This unit has an internal function of supporting, proud to say, not just the men of Atlanta Fire Rescue, but to service all of public safety. We realize that the calls that our people run are strenuous, the stress loads are extremely heavy, and so our goal is to save and prevent any unnecessary, undue strains or stresses as it relates to the call volume and the intensity of what our people see on the streets. And so our human resource is going to always be at the top, because if we don't take care of our people, we definitely cannot take care of the citizens of Atlanta. In that vein, as we continue our mass effort to reduce calls, you will see a couple of enhancements where we will increase the staffing of our community risk reduction section to continue addressing those things prior to alarms. We're proud to say that we have started an initiative where we will address the seniors of the city of Atlanta. We refer to it as our Seasoned Citizen Task Force. Many of our residents that live in senior facilities feel like they don't have a voice, and so we have integrated code enforcement into that space to address the elevator outages, the frequent alarms, and things of that nature to their satisfaction. In addition to that, we are very anxious and excited to explore new technology and go into the management of a drone program. It is our goal to establish a drone program that is available for an emergency or non-emergency response throughout the city of Atlanta, to provide another vantage point or view for decision-making and or to assist other city departments. This unit will be available 24/7 to respond out and through the city of Atlanta. In addition to that, we are establishing what we refer to as a FAST unit program, which is a fast arriving service truck to address elevator issues and alarm issues throughout the city. And we realize that sending engines and ladders may not always be the answer, especially with the congestion in the city of Atlanta. So they will be in smaller units, and they will be trained and capable of addressing those non-emergency calls. And last, and certainly not least, we are very excited about the new Public Safety Training Center. And thank you for your support in that space. It is long awaited and much needed. We are excited about being able to occupy some of that space, training our people to drive, training our people to fight structure fires, and in the vein of EMS, ultimately providing the safest city and the safest environment possible for the city of Atlanta. You look at this slide, you will see the position count by fund, allocating the FTEs for Atlanta Fire Rescue. You will see the breakout for general fund and aviation. Out to the right, you will see our vacancy rate is 16.99%, which is down from just a year ago at 18.83. We attribute that to our increase in our background staff, streamlining of our hiring process, and us moving towards an accelerated recruit training regiment that reduces the training for individuals that are coming from other departments or prior experience from 12 to 14 months to 6 to 8 weeks. And so we are excited to continue in that vein, and our goal is to continue reducing that vacancy rate. On this slide, you will see our year-over-year trending budget. You will see the general fund has a variance and or an increase of just under 9%. You will see aviation is about 13.5, giving us a total of a 22% variance or increase. And we can dive into the proposal on the next slide. Well, you will see there's an uptick on our salary line, and we attribute that to the increase in staffing, where we are intentionally creating more positions and putting more people on the street to run EMS calls, as well as increasing the members in our community risk reduction section, as we spoke before. Also, you will see in that space, we covered out of classification payments that were made to our members or due, and that was due or resulting from the infrequency of our promotional process over the years. You will see a projected decrease for overtime. It does not mean that our members will not have the opportunity or overtime will not be available. This projected decrease is tied to the creation of positions and right-sizing the department and our continuous effort to hire and get people in positions. And so we look to cover unexpected assignments that will be decreased, i.e., we've had members that were working out at the Public Safety Training Center, protecting that space side by side with APD. And so some of those unexpected assignments, we look for those to decrease. Next variance of note that you will see will be the contractual services line, and you will see a slight decrease in that, and we are anticipating and anxious to leave the space that's currently leased now for training, as we anticipate moving into the Public Safety Training Center, hopefully by the end of this year, if not the beginning of next year. You will see the increase on our supply lines, which is inclusive of our EMS initiatives, the operation of and standing up of 2 ambulances in the fire service, as well as the hiring of an additional medical director to help us cover our anticipated shift into EMD, which is emergency medical dispatching, as well as the breadth of EMS services expanding across the city of Atlanta. And if you look at the other expenses line, you will see the increase there is the coming due of lease payments for long-term debt or vehicles financed through GMA, and that has been rolled into our budget to allow us to accommodate that for the upcoming fiscal year. And with that said, Councilmember Shook, we are done, believe it or not. I know historically we're up here for a long time giving the soliloquy of what's going on in the department, but we are prepared to answer any questions that you or council members may have for Atlanta Fire Rescue.
All right. That was a very concise presentation. I'll start off with a couple questions. I know y'all are keen to follow up on your continuing purchase of rolling stock, but where in the budget, which line item would contain that?
Excuse me, say line for what now? I'm sorry?
For rolling stock, I know you wanted to keep adding to your fleet, but I'm wondering which line item includes.
What do you represent as rolling stock? Excuse me.
Fire trucks.
Okay. So those are capital purchases. Those capital purchases are not necessarily in this proposed budget. Those are conversations that we're having with the mayor's office as well as the CFO. You will see historically that they have risen to the challenge and met those needs to the point of we've ordered, as I stated, 44 pieces of equipment. We have a commitment that we will continue to order, and that piece is not necessarily in this budget because they are using an alternative financing source post-GMA.
All right, I'll follow up on that. So we've often heard it said that the optimum staffing is 4 per truck. Are we there yet? Are you still short?
So based on our vacancy rate, we are not there yet. However, fortunately, our overtime budget has allowed us to accommodate and make sure that we have the members that we need on the truck. I shared that we increased our background team so that we can process more files. And so we make sure that the hiring process is continuously open now, 365 days a year, and we'll continue to take applications and process. I shared a while back that our sticking point was not having members that or individuals that were interested in being firefighters. The bandwidth was the number of people that we could train and the length of time that they are in training. but we continue to process, and our goal always is to make sure that we have 120 people in training at one time, and so we will continue that process and continue to have graduations. I believe our next graduation is a class of, I believe, 30, and they are graduating in July.
Is it your anticipation that the coming pay enhancements and also the coming multiplier in the pension calculation is going to get you to 4 on a truck?
So the answer to your question is yes, all of that is being taken into consideration when we look at what FTEs are approved. And so that is a part of the approved FTEs. When we look at what is unfunded, that is always a conversation based on need, and the administration as well as finance continues to support that effort.
Union mentioned their interest in discussing the possibility of covering up or deactivating the inward-facing, cab cameras. Just curious as to your response to that.
So I've had some robust conversations with the union as well as the labor organizations. Our position right now, meaning the administration, our position is that we are for the cameras being active externally and internally. And I'll tell you why. The cameras themselves are not actively recording any and everything that is going on in the truck. The cameras and the microphones are active or hot once it is activated, and it records a few seconds before and a few seconds after.
Okay. And then lastly, what is the status of the proposed EMS station in the Armor Yards area?
So the next one on the plate is the Northside EMS. I've been talking regularly with Dean, to the point that there are a couple of pieces of properties that are potential pieces that we're looking at right now. Took a site visit as recently as last week. And so now we're working out the logistics to see if that piece will work, if it will handle the size of the station, if it will handle the weight of the vehicles. And so we can talk about that one more in detail. I can meet with you and talk about that one, but very excited about getting that one teed up to go.
Yep, as am I. Mr. Hillis.
Thank you, Chairman Shook. Thank you, Chief, and your team for the presentation. On the smoke detector and the car seat program, those costs, are they in the supplies line item of your budget, or where would they be?
The smoke detector program is funded from external funding. We get that money from the Governor's Office of Highway Safety, and it's usually through a grant. However, if the grant is short or we do not have the funding, then we roll in the additional needs to our day-to-day or our general fund expense.
Car seat program?
Car seat program as well.
Okay. What probably lots of items. What are some examples of what would be in supplies, like your EMS supplies, medicines, things like that on your trucks?
So the whole transport and the EMS space is very new to us. And so I don't have a number to qualify or quantify what that cost is going to be as it relates to the increase. Some of it is projecting and us trying to figure out exactly what is it going to cost us in this space because it is relatively new.
Understood. And much like APD does, you, in your head count, because of course they're getting paid, they're just not providing sworn firefighter service. Even recruits are reflected in the head count in this presentation, right? So
Correct.
How many recruits are currently in whatever phase of our academy?
To my knowledge, we have a total of 74 recruits that are in training right now. Chief Hill is up here. He is over support services. He could give more detail if needed.
So we have 74 recruits that are currently in the training center, and we have 5 that are in red shirt status preparing to go to class, with additional 15 to be hired by May 23rd. We're expecting to have a full 30 for class in June. That's going to bring us up to our 125.
Thank you for that. And on to, I don't believe it was touched on in your presentation, but I was looking in the budget book. I've been hearing for years about this program about updating our location technology for the hydrants in partnership with DWM. Is that something that is still ongoing? And we've been hearing about that for quite a few years.
That is still ongoing. However, that program, the lead for that program has been taken over by Watershed. And so we're constantly working with them, trying to streamline. One, we had a separate database, they had a separate database. But the next phase of it, once we consolidated the databases, was to come up with a GIS location for each one. So our GIS team is working with Watershed to bring that to fruition.
But when's that expected to be completed?
I don't have a completion date for the GIS component, but I can get that and get back with you, at least a tentative date.
Appreciate that. As I have asked a few times before, anything in this budget or otherwise that is going to look to fill what I feel is a needed space, and I know you have more than one, but with all of the attention that the mayor, as well as myself, are putting on the Chattahoochee River, we are doing a camp and paddle trail that is going to be in our territory starting at Sandy Peachtree Park, up Peachtree Creek, go through the mouth of the Chattahoochee River, and then all the way down our river in the city of Atlanta, as well as, there's the goal to have the trail along the river open by the end of 2025 before the World Cup. Are we looking at any possibility of standing up a mini waterboat station on the Chattahoochee, or just to have better response time than what would come otherwise from Station 11?
And so that is always a possibility, and thank you for that question. That is always a possibility, and we started down that road when we were anticipating going this direction when the mayor announced that the city was purchasing that property, and that's why we went ahead and ordered the 2 jet boats. Our intent is to have conversation about having a boat located in close proximity to Chattahoochee versus our deployment now of putting them on a trailer and taking them there. And so we'll look to build that out. Once we get more of what the plan is, our goal is to make sure that we can service it properly.
And the trail, of course, is a little ways out, but I mean the concrete trail, but the actual camp and paddle trail, I think that's going to be up and running as soon as this summer sometime. So,
Gotcha.
I'd like to follow up on that, and then all of the AEDs and SCBAs that we did on the prior purchase, are those all out and deployed currently?
So they are not deployed at this time. With us changing from a new model to new technology, there's a training piece that we have to put in place to make sure that our members are prepared to operate in IDLH environments or dangerous environments with that equipment. So the training staff is working now to train them crew by crew, and then we will have a full deployment because you can't have 2 different models out on the trucks at the same time.
And that's for both the AEDs and the SCBAs? Or?
Yes.
Oh. Two requests. Oh, well, before I get into that, what is the, I know we're going through the ISO recertification. What is the current update on that, and when is that expected to be finalized, and we know if we retain that ISO 1 rating?
We are still going through the process. We anticipate that we will have something to present first quarter of next year.
And then the 2 requests, which you kind of touched on and we spoke about in the opening budget session with finance, is if I could get, you mentioned 44 pieces of equipment have been ordered. We could get a list of both everything that is on ordered, even if it's been already deployed, just kind of going back a few years, maybe start at the beginning of this administration, show what we have ordered, whether it's deployed or not. If it's not deployed, when do we expect to receive it? So if I could get that information, as well as what the plan is for this upcoming fiscal year. Finance, I thought, had said that there was a plan, and there may or may not be some details in this presentation, but if I just get some further details as what you all have agreed on with the administration to purchase going forward,
Okay.
because they outlined, I believe, it was 19 19 or $20 million, and not just fire trucks, but other equipment as well.
Correct.
We get the details on that also. And then just with all of the new stations we're building and bringing online, hopefully here in a few months, Station 22 will be one of those. But if I could just get an updated list, ranking of the station replacement priorities.
Gotcha. And Station 22 is slated for August of this year.
All right, Chief, thank you. That's all I have. Thank you, Chairman Shook.
Thank you, Ms. Bactieri.
It's difficult to find the button with all these wires. So first of all, let me say good afternoon, no longer morning. Thank
Good
y'all
afternoon.
so much for being here. A couple of things I wanted to first thank you all for specifically for in the district is big thanks to AFRD. You guys caught somebody who who was unwell and had been breaking into our small businesses in East Atlanta repeatedly. And thanks to the firefighters at Station 13 who just happened to see it happening, they were able to stop the person that was committing the crime, and we were able to get him off the streets, and that had been a long time issue. So deeply grateful to you all it was a very big win for us. And,
Thank you.
As always, the East Atlanta is in love with that fire station, so with good reason. So we appreciate that. Chief, there's one thing I did want to flag personally. If you wouldn't mind, we had that housing that we're trying to do for firefighters around the corner from our Sweet Auburn, our station on Edgewood. If you wouldn't mind, we have that ready. We have it ready to move, and we just want to make sure that we're working with the Fire Foundation and the department on that. So when we have a moment to connect,
Oh, definitely.
that would be, it's moving. So I'm extremely excited to have additional housing in the district for our first responders. I also was hoping to get a check on the improvements to the stations. I know that we gave, each of us gave, well, some of us gave donations for the improvements, and from my end, we haven't gotten an update in a little bit. I wanted to see how the improvements were coming to the stations, especially in District 5. If there's a way that we can get a report on that.
So there's a report that's being generated, there's a report that's being generated right now.
Okay.
I was told that report should be ready on or about the 15th of this month, and we'll make sure that each of you get a copy of the report.
Thank you. And more so, not even just a reflection on you all, just to make sure that I'm aware. So if there is assistance needed, I just, I don't want HVAC going out this summer while y'all are working, or anything else for that matter, because as we learned in the Citizen Academy, y'all do a lot more than most people realize. And I also wanted to thank y'all for the Citizen Academy, and I want to remind everyone that at least one council member kept their uniform on the entire time. So that was an incredible experience, and I believe that my colleagues might have some follow-up questions on that. And I also, the pieces that I was curious also on, like, some of the mental health improvements. I asked APD about this, the union yesterday. And I know there's been an increase, at least on the police front, with people with depression and suicidal ideation. I am certain that we're experiencing it with our firefighters. And I want to ensure, I know we did a walkthrough of the public safety headquarters and saw a lot of the mental health specialists on site there to assist. But something came up yesterday that I found deeply troubling, and that's being changed. I want to ensure that's also being changed for fire, is that when people call in, they don't tend to treat folks unless they are currently in the act. And I want to make sure that we have preventative measures for first responders, or if we do not, is that something that council needs to assist with? And so if there's a way that we can have you wouldn't mind briefing us or giving a written briefing on what we have in terms of mental health treatment, just to make sure that we're giving our first responders the very best. I'd like to have a better understanding of that.
Okay.
And I also wanted to, I'm happy to hear about the retention piece and everything else. Are we possibly looking at built-in step increases or anything else, or just are we working on getting a system in place where we have a better understanding of what improvements need to be made each year, so we don't have any situation where we might have engines down at stations, or unnecessary or needed equipment not present, or making sure that we're keeping everything up to date? Are we building something in terms of a regular yearly review, updates, any type of increases that we're working back in? Or I know that there's been a fleet plan for a while, but in terms of making sure we're staying up to date on that?
So what you will see is coming very shortly the results of the fleet maintenance audit. That audit sparked a lot of conversation and changes in fleet services. And so today I think we have, 5 engines down and 4 or 5 ladders, but the ladder issues are issues that popped up in the last few days. And so the numbers have been relatively low as it relates to equipment that's down. There is a new fleet manager that has been hired. And from what I'm told, he has a wealth of experience. And so we're excited about where we're going with fleet maintenance and the collaboration between us. And we're looking forward to getting the results of the report and making some much needed changes.
Okay. Looking forward to seeing that. And in terms of, this is actually something that came up at the Edgewood station when I was talking to some of the, with some of the guys there, when they were kind enough to host me. We were talking about kind of the future of fire and public safety and first responders and how to kind of get ahead of issues. Has there been any talks of, or like any type of forward thinking on maybe preventative work fire can do in a neighborhood, whether that's bike patrol, whether that's just walking the corridor, whether that's, or is that just not something that's what you guys have? I mean, you do a lot without weapons. And so I know that you already have a broad range of responsibilities. Is that something that is potential conversation or consideration for the future?
So, of course, you know that we stay in the streets.
Yes.
And so there's a lot going on in the city. I won't say that we have not had the conversation. We just don't know if the timing is right to go in that direction. I'm proud to share with you that the fire count in the city has continuously gone down for the last 3 years. I believe we had 640 fires, actual fires last year. However, if our citizens make the call, we're still coming. And so as we are out and about, we're vigilant and we're active. And believe it or not, that's one of the byproducts of us being active in the community. When there is nothing going on, there is no alarm, we still encourage the stations to get out and about because they can see something. But we definitely ask the citizens if they see something, please say something, don't hesitate, and give us a call.
Thank you. And I know that we're looking at pay increases this year. I know we're now exploring housing for our firefighters. Those are all well and good. Is there anything else at council that you feel that we could investigate or look into to help lower the cost of living for our firefighters so that we can help better support them live in the city and retain them? Are there other things that we could be assisting to? Whenever we think of retention, we always relate it back to pay and housing. And yes, those are two very big components. But are there other things that we could also assist with to help with alleviating the cost of living as it continues to skyrocket, or alleviating the burden of, existing in a community that where cost is consistently going up? Or is there anything we can do to help with retention and supporting you all?
So what I will say right now, the short answer right now is no, but not to say that will not change.
I expect it to change.
And so we appreciate the collaboration between the administration and the council and our foundation in coming up with solutions to challenges that come up. We have a lot of things going on right now that are going to be positive for our recruitment as well as our retainment. And so we're very appreciative of all the support that we're getting, and we'll keep working on this together.
Thank you all very much for all that you do. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
And I also want to encourage my colleagues that any times you want to go down to a station, have lunch with the guys, it's a good way to learn a lot. So I appreciate y'all letting me pop in from time to time just to hang out. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Winston.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Chief Brian, and all the women and men of the Atlanta Fire and Rescue Team for all the work you do to keep our city safe on a daily basis. Councilmember Bakhtiari mentioned that a few council members last year had the opportunity to do a half-day training with you all, and we got to see firsthand a lot of what it takes in the grueling work and training that goes into this job. One of the things that I took away from it was a lot of the equipment that you all need to stay safe in your job. And one piece of equipment was the bailout kits that we got to see. that seems to be a critical piece of equipment that all our fire and rescue personnel need to have. I know there was I guess a charge to get some of those in-house last year. Just wanted to see what the status of that is and what we can do to try to help with that.
Chief Harris, you want to speak on that?
Yeah, great question. So currently, bailout kits was a vision of about 3 years ago, driven by Chief Smith. It becomes part of our PPE ensemble. I've currently, up to this point, have the 3rd Battalion, which is downtown, and the 5th Battalion, East and Southeast Atlanta, fitted out with bailout kits. We've also completed a AFG grant to finish that project this year. Hopefully we can get that. If not, no grant money, will we continue to purchase 2nd and the 6th Battalion out of this budget and PPE to have them fit out. There's a priority plan for that. As you know, that bailout kit is a phenomenal device to get us out through a window or anything to that effect if we don't have ladders.
And how are you making a decision on where to prioritize those kids?
So another great question. So through analytical data as far as height of elevation of buildings, ladder access, as you know, with the cranes across the city, when we see new residential apartment complexes similar to La Vista Walk, 4 or 5 story apartment buildings that have courtyards with balconies facing in those courtyards where we don't have the ability to get ladders in, we search those areas out and put them there. Essentially, 1-story wood frame neighborhoods across the city, they would be low priority where we'd have some more of our apartment complex areas, and then downtown Peachtree Corridor would be the priority.
Okay. All right. Again, thank you all. I turn it back over to the Vice Chair. Thank you.
Next up, we have Councilmember Dozier.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. Thank you so much, Chief Smith. I appreciate y'all. I was listening to the presentation in the back, so apologies for arriving late, but I was listening to everything y'all had to say. Just one quick comment for my question. I know my colleague, Councilmember Bakhtiari, had a question about the work y'all are doing around mental health. One of the things that we've been working with Commissioner Talisha Smith, as well as with Financial Officer Muhammad Bala, earlier this year at the Georgia State Legislature, House Bill 451 is a preemption bill that passed both houses of the Georgia Assembly that requires every municipality and locality across the state of Georgia to carry insurance for first responders for PTSD specifically. Still waiting on the governor's signature on that legislation, but the city of Atlanta, per that legislation, will be required to carry that to support our first responders who are dealing with mental health issues and PTSD, covering that as part of our insurance package. So I know we're still working on the implementation piece, but I did want to add that clarity. That's something that we've been thinking about as a city. So I didn't want to put y'all on the spot, but just so you know that at the very least, council and other parts of our city got y'all's back. One question I did have, I know Assistant Chief Thomas was involved with the Vision Zero work that the Department of Transportation has been doing to reduce pedestrian fatalities across the city. A lot of those recommendations are geared towards narrowing streets and installing bike lanes and making sidewalks wider, which I know can sometimes create some friction with our first responders and y'all's ability to get from point A services. I know other municipalities across the country have looked at smaller fire apparatuses to help address or help navigate this new kind of landscape. I don't know with y'all's capital program or y'all's fleet enhancement program, if y'all were looking at smaller apparatuses to better navigate, particularly downtown. I mean, my apologies for getting all these bike lanes installed, but one of the things that I think about is, but want to make sure that we can still get emergency services to people that need it, even though we're doing all these things to make pedestrians' lives a little bit more safer. And so in the other piece of that as well, I know in my district over in West End, Fire Station 7 only has EMT services because the existing bays aren't big enough for apparatus. And so we'll love to, even in that context, see additional fire services who are able to kind of fill that gap. So if you can kind of unpack that a little bit, we want to learn more about what y'all are doing to navigate kind of this changing landscape around here.
So first off, thank you for your support on that House bill because we do take the mental health piece very seriously. As it relates to the fire trucks, we have come to the harsh reality that a fire truck is not a fire truck is not a fire truck. And so as the density of the city continues to change, we search for alternative methods to respond. There are some instances where the size of the truck does matter, meaning the ability or the capabilities of the pump as well as the equipment it can carry. But in those instances or those areas where we can make adjustments, we are more than willing to do that. And that's why you will see in the upcoming budget where we are creating the fast units, the service trucks. You will see the rapid response units on the streets more. And so you will see more crew-size pickup trucks responding to calls that are equipment appropriate for Atlanta Fire Rescue. And so we realize, and we will stay in that space with our apparatus committee to make sure that we not only just buy what is available, but buy what works for our jurisdiction. Because what works out in Sandy Springs as a fire truck or specifications simply won't work here just because of the density of the city.
Are those fast trucks able to respond to fires, or are we still leaning on their?
Those trucks will be service trucks only,
Okay.
but they will be handling service calls such as elevators, alarm systems, and things of that nature. Historically, we sent our ladder trucks, which are the ones with the tillered aerials, to those calls. And while they're fun to drive, they can be problematic moving down the streets, as well as not cost effective. And so our goal is looking at some alternative methods to respond to give the services that we need.
Understood. And I guess part of my question then is, with the larger vehicles, with the ladder trucks or the apparatuses, is there an opportunity as far as y'all's capital program for future purchases to include smaller apparatus vehicles that still serve that niche but are physically smaller too, so that they can still provide that fire relief for communities that might be more dense or y'all historically might have had trouble navigating because of changes in the street design. And so, I get the niche that y'all's EMT services and y'all fast truck services are filling, but specifically to the ladder trucks, are there opportunities to get smaller ladder trucks in future?
So our apparatus committee is always in that space.
Okay.
And I say the things that we ordered yesterday are not necessarily going to be the things that we order tomorrow. We're not stuck in that space. And so as they come with, and that's the beauty of having a diverse group on the apparatus committee, where you have senior officers who've seen and done it. You've got operators or vehicle operators that actually drive trucks on a day-to-day basis. We have members that work in fleet services, as well as we have people that manage that space. So we're looking at it from multiple angles. And yes, at the top of the list is the navigation or the ability to move the ladder trucks around the city. And how do we get from point A to point B? Because response time is always going to be a critical thing for us to address, not only the environment and getting eco-friendly vehicles. Our goal is to make sure that we, are not occupying any space we don't need to occupy or congesting the traffic, and that's why you'll see the call reduction efforts as well. But we want to make sure that we've got the right equipment for the right call. And so what does that mean? That means that, to your point, you may see a fire engine that may be a lot smaller than one in one station in another versus their primary response area, their primary territory. But it's always going to be driven based on the resources that are needed for us to mitigate the incident.
Thank you. And just to add again, we'll love to see apparatus for ladder truck back at Station 7. I recognize it's a historic building, and the existing trucks don't fit in that historic building, but if we were to get smaller trucks as part of a future procurement, that would be able to bring that service back into West End in a way that I think neighbors really would love to see as far as fire coverage. So just putting that back in the top of your head as y'all looking at future.
Gotcha, thank you. Point noted.
Vice Chair, you.
Councilmember Dozier, I did have a follow-up. Councilmember Dozier stole kind of the question, but going back to the smaller response vehicles, we call them, or have called them, quick units. I know we've purchased more of those. Haven't really been able to do what we intend to because they're kind of filling what they're, as we mentioned, the apparatus issue with having so many in fleet services getting repaired. They've just kind of been filled in for engines, but wanted to, I guess, follow up on, because this came to my mind, because I just read an article yesterday about the National Fire Department deploying 8 new, what they call them squad trucks, not the big quad 4 rescue truck, but basically look like our quick units. May have seemingly a little bit more equipment on it. They can respond to wrecks. It has extrication equipment, elevator keys, things like that you had mentioned on it. So I know we purchased a few of those, and Councilmember Dozier mentioned the safety aspect of just getting smaller vehicles. Touched on how they can generally be more responsive because they can move quicker and or more nimble in an urban area. But the other thing that's come to my mind in our conversations about these large apparatus, their trucks and engines that just get so much wear and tear from a massive truck and a massive engine responding to a wreck on 285 or a wreck on Donnelly Hollowell, getting all of those miles on them. The other aspect is that those trucks, which are much, much cheaper, would reduce the wear and tear on those engines and trucks and extend their life. So all that being said, what is the current status of our, I guess are we still calling it a quick unit program, or what is the
So it is a resurgence of our quick unit program, which is a rapid response vehicle. We have a total of 5 vehicles, and as you stated, they have helped us along the way with some of the challenges we've had with fleet. We are going through the process now of creating additional positions and hiring. For those who don't know, the rapid response units are going to be primarily staffed by civilian EMTs and paramedics, and so we have opened that hiring pool up to try to get those people on board, get them trained to the Atlanta Fire EMS standard, and then we'll put them in service.
So we have 5 currently.
Correct.
And what are we looking to go to?
The addition, well, our goal is to get additional trucks. We don't have a number yet, but our start was 5. Let's iron out the kinks of how they're going to fit into our network, and then we will get additional trucks.
And those 5 are the newer trucks we have?
Yes.
All right. Councilmember Lewis, do you have anything? Councilmember Lewis.
Chief, I think my questions to the fire department will be the same until it actually gets done. A lot of stations are being repaired around the city of Atlanta, and Zone 3 on Cleveland Avenue, Station 30 is still down. And when I say it's down, the entire community is black around that area. We were talking about a little earlier about baby car seats. I legit had a child who couldn't leave Grady Memorial Hospital because his mom sent her mom to the fire station to get a car seat before they came to pick up the baby. And so the fire station was closed and they didn't know where to go. And so I had to reach out and send them to another fire station. This has to change. We are the bottom of the city. I know it. I know we're the bottom. I know you can't go any further in the city than District 12. But where on the schedule is Fire Station 30? And where are we at in the process?
So thank you for the question, and I just want you to know that I don't see a District 12 as the bottom of the city. The services in the city of Atlanta should be comparable anywhere you call 911. So thank you for sharing that, and I'll have further conversations with the Deputy of Field Operations about the operation of that station. As it relates to the upcoming Station 30, that lineup, it has not changed. Station 30 is at the top of the list. The last conversation I had was that the architect had completed their work and that we were doing the permitting now. And so my goal is to take that station down as quickly as possible and get a new one up because they deserve it.
Well, thank you for that. But my only thing is I would love to get a date or at least a year they'll be open, because the houselessness around that station, literally around the station, nowhere else in the district has went up to where we have 2 encampments, not 1, but 2 encampments within a 20-yard step of the station. So and that's on a main artery, a main connection road of my district. So I really need that station to come back because it's in a prime location. It's prime location for the district as well. And as you've told me before, the largest space landmass-wise in the city for a station. And so we really need that intentional date for us because we've now been down for about a year and a half now. Thank you.
Clearly understood the urgency, and I will get with Chief Burton, who's over technical services, and we will get with Dean, and we'll get back with you on some tentative dates.
President Shipman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Chief. Good to see you all. Thank you for your presentation. A few different questions. One, I want to start with the future. World Cup is coming. We're obviously preparing for it. Given some of the lead times on equipment and things that you need, are there any specific moves in this budget to prepare for the World Cup, or are there any other things that you anticipate needing ahead of that event?
So as it relates to this budget is not necessarily centered around the World Cup. It is about the needs of Atlanta Fire Rescue and us moving forward. We've been assured by the administration that as we go through the planning process, which we've already started, those things that are identified will be provided.
Got it. And just any summary of the kinds of things that you think you may need in order to prepare for the World Cup? Is that equipment? Is that personnel? Is it certain facilities that will need upgrades? I'm not trying to put you on the spot. I'm just curious.
If anything, I would say it would be enhancements, and it's going to be staffing.
Okay. Great. On page 2 of the appendix, there's a position count by office. I think there's a typo, but that's not my question. I am curious right now, if you look at is the FY24 general fund number, the 951, is that filled or budgeted? That's authorized positions. What is that number actually filled right now? So if 951 is budgeted, where are we? Okay. I'd love to see where we are with that number and also in the other operating funds number, the actuals.
Okay.
I'm trying to understand how big of a lift we have when it comes to the difference between where we are at the moment and where we're trying to go.
Understood.
Thanks.
Page 3, as when the report was pulled, we were filled at 7 on page 3. You'll see in the presentation, you'll see we were filled at 797 at that point in time.
797 when the report, right, and 221. So the 797 is the equivalent number to the 9,
Which that number probably.
the 951 number. Got it. Okay. Perfect. In finance's budget update for FY24 that we had last week, one of the notations was that overtime for AFR was running ahead of where it was expected in FY24. And that's given how many positions we still have unfilled, it's totally reasonable that that's the case. The number they gave to us was 1.1 million in additional overtime than expected. In this budget, we've got a decrease in the general fund of about 780,000 anticipated in overtime. But really, that's expecting that we're not only going to be 780,000 year over year, but we're going to be 780,000 plus 1.1 because right now this year we've been running over. So my question is, do we really feel like that is an appropriate overtime expectation, or is that a bit too conservative? Because this year, we obviously budgeted what we thought. We've had to run more overtime. So I'm really trying to understand if we think that we can make it that big of a move when it comes to overtime. So I'm stealing Chair Shook's question. I apologize, Chair Shook, for taking over the overtime question.
So with that said, I do believe that that number is a good number. And I believe we can go in that direction. And one of the major things is us going to the new Public Safety Training Center. It will allow us to change the footprint of how we train, how many people we train. But the other thing is us pushing further into this space of getting people from other departments, the ART program, accelerated training program, getting people through training in 6 to 8 weeks will allow us to get that vacancy number down. And so that overtime is going to be tied to those FTEs. The more people we can get in, then it'll go down. So I believe we can do it.
Got it. Another update that they made to us in that same presentation, finance for FY24, was the repair and maintenance budget. And that also has been a little higher than we expected, which I think you'll find everybody on this council is supportive of maintenance and repairs. So that's not the question. But the question is, how much expectation or how much are repairs and maintenance going up, down, staying the same within this budget? Can you just talk about your anticipation around that next year?
So that maintenance piece is a piece that we don't manage.
Yep.
That's funding that's out there. So obviously with newer vehicles, your maintenance should go down. Every vehicle, bless you, every vehicle that we've purchased, we're getting the maintenance plan with it. And so we're anticipating that that is going to impact that line as well, because we're getting them the maintenance contract with vehicles.
And and this may be a question for finance, is the maintenance contract in this budget, or is it a capital, is it tied to the capital expenditure? How does the maintenance contract on that new equipment work from a budget perspective?
Tied into the cost of the vehicle.
Sure, that's a good question. So the maintenance contract will be in general fund budget. The lease payments for the new equipment that will come in, you'll see that in the other financing uses. So,
But the maintenance is in this budget, it's not in the lease payments.
Yes.
Got it.
And I think when we were kind of discussing through the process of how and when the equipment starts rolling in, we should start to see some pressure lifted off of the maintenance costs. So
Yep.
eventually, in FY26, 27, 28, as the fleet modernizes, we should start reallocating those dollars to other pressing needs that the department has.
Got it. And how long are the maintenance contracts?
5 years.
5 years. Great. One other question, in our budget book on the airport revenue fund pages, the authorized position count FY24 to FY25 is going down slightly by 2. But the salaries for both sworn and regular has a pretty significant increase year over year. Between those two line items, it's about 6.2 million. Can you just talk about the why such an increase in the salary lines when FTE authorization is actually going down? Just help me understand how that's working in the budget.
I can answer that question. So the 260 and the 258 that you see in the airport general fund, those are FTE positions, both filled and vacant positions.
Right.
The filled positions year over year are increasing. They've done some hiring at the airport facility, so there's actual more bodies this year than last year at the airport, which accounted for the seating of the personnel budget being where it's at.
So vacancy rate going down.
Correct.
Salaries going up.
Correct.
Got it. Okay, thank you. That's all I had. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. A couple more things. Sorry I had to step out if these questions have already been asked and answered. So we know that for police, kind of the most vulnerable attrition time is in years 1 through 5. Is it similar for fire, or is there a different pattern?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the question.
So there's a spike in police attritions in the first 5 years of their service. Is it similar for fire, or is there a different pattern?
It's a different beast for us. The attrition rate is roughly about, 3%? I want to say about 3%. But I think that with the upcoming pay raises and things of that nature, that number will continue to go down.
Right.
Just firefighters just typically don't leave.
I know that your department has the ability to kind of levy a charge to recoup your costs when, say, a tractor-trailer truck with hazardous chemicals overturns on the highway. Is there much of that? Do you fine people or charge people to defray your costs?
It's not a regular occurrence, no.
Mentioned false alarms. How serious is that problem, and how's it trending in terms of the number?
You want to speak to that, Bert?
Could you repeat the question, please?
Yeah, false alarms. Just how significant a problem is it? I mean, I'm sure if you have to even go to one, that's a problem. But I'm wondering kind of how many there are, and if the trend is up, flat, or decreasing.
Councilman Shook, I'll jump in. It's been trending between 3,500 to 4,000 false alarms a year over like the past 3 or 4 years, and it may go back even further.
All right, so I know this in previous councils, have authorized the levying of fines and whatnot, some of which can be pretty severe for repeat offenders, to try to spare you from this. So I will check. I guess that's probably a finance department question, because I'd like to see if the steps we've taken have had any effect in cutting down on this problem.
Right, and I'm sure there'll be some differences when we look at the numbers, take a deeper dive into the numbers when we look at automated alarm systems that are considered false alarms versus good intent calls. I know some of them may be tracked and identified as the good intent calls may be considered a false alarm, but we can look at those numbers and have that conversation with finance about recouping some of that cost.
Okay. And I'll ask them offline. Mr. Lewis.
I just want to say, Chief Smith, thank you so much for the service you've given to the city of Atlanta. I do know that you go outside of your things you're supposed to, and you go above and beyond. The firefighters in the city of Atlanta always have. I just wanted to make sure that we are focused on Station 30, and I know that's not you. I know it's not the fire department, but I just wanted to make sure that when you're meeting with Dean and when you're meeting with the mayor's office, that the councilmen in the communities are always asking about this. So thank you for your service. Thank you for what you're doing. Thank you to our firefighters who I've seen, who I've had to personally call you for a young man who was in Thomasville, whose sister broke her leg, but it wasn't deemed priority enough for Grady Hospital or for the ambulance to come pick her up. But you came and picked them up. And so I appreciate your service, but I wanted to keep Station 30 on the top, or get it to the top of the list, because when I see other fire station ribbon cuttings, I say ain't no way in the world Station 30 is at the top if this ribbon cutting just got happened before that one. So I just wanted to make sure I made that statement. Thank you.
Understood. Thank you.
Yeah, one more question. You mentioned it, and it's in our budget books around performance measurements and calls, and that fire-related incidents have been going down over time. But I also notice that EMS incidents actually have been flat to declining as well. I'm just curious why that is. That number surprised me a little bit. I expect, given safety and building conditions and stuff, I expect fire to be going down over time. But EMS surprised me. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Sure. So when you look at the EMS calls, and as I shared with the group earlier, when we vet through what calls come through E911 and what calls are we really needed on, that's tied into that process. And so when we determine if this is truly a fire response needed or should an ambulance be going, when we go back and revisit who is going where, that can reduce the call volume as well. But it doesn't change the fact that we're still coming.
So that might point to and I know we've made investments in E911. We've had some fire folks actually sitting in the E911 beside the operators. So that would indicate that maybe we're getting better at triage. We're getting better at deploying our resources correctly, as opposed to just sending no matter what the case.
That's correct.
Good. Well, that's good news. Thank you. Thank you.
I believe that's going to conclude this portion. We will be back at 2:30 for citizens.
Thank you.